Guys, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I've had this entire thing so wrong for so long. And that's what's so embarrassing about it. You know, you'd think a lawyer would know what a case is about, what a trial is about, what is being tried, what is the cause of action, who is the defendant, who's the plaintiff. But I messed up. I messed up so bad over the past 2 years, and I don't even understand how. You know, all this time I thought that we were dealing with a defamation case. You know, with Amber Heard as the defendant. So she is being tried. But that's not at all what it is. We've got it so wrong. And you know, thank God for Amber's lawyers. Thank God for her lawyers for showing us the light, for telling us what this is really about. You know, we've let Johnny and his lawyers distract us for too long, right? The soap opera. This trial is about Johnny Depp's drug use. He's being tried for his substance abuse issues, or basically using anything at all his entire life. Or at least that's what Amber's lawyers would like us to believe. And you know what? Camille did warn the jury in her opening statement, which we covered in last week's recap, that they're going to try to distract you. They're going to pull up horrific things. They're going to try to muddy the waters. That's what they do. That's what Amber Heard does. But don't let them succeed. Don't let them fool you. And I guess it's only a matter of time. You know, in a few weeks, we'll find out whether the defense's ploy, their strategy, has been successful. Now, in all honesty, I know there's a lot of talk about how this is all irrelevant. Why are we talking about Johnny's drug use? And this happened in the UK. This is nothing new. But from, again, a purely objective standpoint, not thinking about Johnny versus Amber, with instances or cases of DV, it's not entirely irrelevant. It's not entirely, you know, left field to try to prove that the person accused of DV abuses substances, because they become a monster when they're under the influence or when they're in a blackout. You know, Rottenborn's favorite word, as Johnny pointed out to him. He's like, you love that word, don't you? As much as you love it, I'm sorry, I wasn't in a blackout. That's literally what he told him about Australia, you know, when he was in a nervous breakdown after having the tip of his finger. You know what? So I get what they're doing. You know, they're trying to paint Johnny out to be this monster, which is exactly Amber Heard's angle, right? And they've really latched on to that word monster, as we'll see when we discuss the week 2 recap. Also, since we're on that note, friendly reminder that this is just a recap and it's not going to be in depth. You can all view the footage on YouTube in your own time. Especially when it comes to Johnny, I really do urge anyone who doesn't know anything about this case to go to a YouTube channel called Incredibly Average. It's run by this incredible, pun intended, person called Brian. And honestly, I came across that channel completely by happenstance in April of 2020, in the early days of lockdown, and that's how I stumbled upon the truth. So, without any further ado, let's get started. We picked up in week 2 with a continuation of Dr. Kipper's deposition. There was a little bit of cross-exam to begin with, but honestly, it's not much different to what we discussed last week. So it was just more about drugs and Johnny's colorful language in his text messages. Really important and strong evidence in support of Johnny came out. So Dr. Kipper talked about how he met Johnny, how it all started in 2014 in Boston because Johnny was sick and tired of his opiates addiction, and Dr. Kipper facilitated his detox in the Bahamas. Dr. Kipper confirms that during his time in the Bahamas, which was quite extended, and he pretty much testified to seeing Johnny daily, Amber Heard never once sought treatment from Dr. Kipper for any injuries whatsoever. And more importantly, she never had any injuries. She never complained of any instances of DV, and Dr. Kipper never witnessed anything. Dr. Kipper then talked about Aaron Boyram, I think it's Boyram, who was the nurse that was assigned to Amber Heard in particular. He testified that Amber never sought treatment for any injuries, neither from him or from Aaron Boyram. Now, at this stage in week 2, Aaron hasn't testified, and the December 15th incident where Aaron wrote in her notes that apart from a little, kind of bite mark or laceration on her lip, which could have been self-inflicted, she suffered from dry lips. I think she was on Accutane, so it makes a lot of sense. Apart from that note, Amber never complained to Aaron about any injuries. Very important evidence regarding Australia. Dr. Kipper testified that Amber never sought any medical attention when he arrived at the house to treat Johnny's finger and take him to, or go with him rather, to the ER. He never observed any injuries on Amber as well. And of course, Johnny's lawyers were very specific and asked him, any areas that Amber claimed she sustained injuries, they asked about these areas, like her hands and her feet. And he said, no, not that I recall, there was nothing wrong with her. And as a doctor in particular, you would think he would have noticed. He would have noted something down. In fact, it's his obligation, his responsibility to note down these things. Here's another kicker. So Nurse Monroe, who worked with Dr. Kipper, received a call from Amber on the 17th of December 2015, 2 days after the incident before the James Corden show, where she was meant to allegedly be suffering from a broken nose and a swollen lip or split lip and bruised eyes, etc., etc. By the way, shout out to Andy from the UK, who sends me his analysis on a regular basis. And he attached, which I'm not going to do in this video, but he attached photographs of women who have actually suffered from the injuries Amber claims to have sustained. You almost don't look human anymore. In fact, anyone who's had a nose job, it's quite similar. Not that I've had a nose job, but I know people who've had a nose job, and I've seen them in the recovery process, and it's, to begin with, a really, really scary look to have. You don't have eyes anymore. It's all bruised and blue and basically nothing like what Amber looked like in her photos or even on the James Corden show. So back to that. She called Nurse Monroe complaining of a headache that she allegedly sustained from bumping her head 2 days prior. Now, of course, viewing it from the other side, you can easily say, well, victims of DV, they always cover for the perpetrator because they still love them, or maybe they're embarrassed, or, they don't want to air out their dirty laundry, they're ashamed. So she lied and said, oh, I bumped my head, when in fact Johnny headbutted her and broke her nose. That argument, can be made. It's funny how people refuse to believe that argument when Johnny covered for Amber about his finger. But again, we'll get to that because Johnny says it himself with his own words. But essentially, she presented herself to Nurse Monroe. It was initially a phone consult, and then she showed up, and a physical examination was performed. Now, this is all noted in a medical report that was put on screen for the jury and for all of us to read. And in that note, you can see that Nurse Monroe said that her skin was intact with normal coloring, no swelling, or facial asymmetry. No concussion, and that was that. I urge you, if you can stomach it, if you don't know what it looks like to have a broken nose, I urge you to Google it. And then I urge you to arrive at your own conclusions. Amber's lawyers took over after that, and they basically said, well, the ER notes in Australia say that he injured himself, his own finger, using a knife. So he cut himself. And then Dr. Kipper said, no, that's what he told them, or that's what someone from his staff told them, because again, we'll hear from Johnny that he said something else. But the ER was, the medical staff there just wrote down what was told to them. and we will get to what the surgeon said, basically calling Johnny a liar and going, sir, that's not what happened to your finger, is it? Also worth noting that we go back to Aaron Boyrum in the December 2015 incident when Amber presented and Aaron said, I checked her and there was nothing wrong with her in her notes. She never told Dr. Kipper about any injuries that were concerning, that could have been a result of DV or anything at all, even though it would have been her job. Dr. Kipper confirmed all of his staff would have had to report any such serious incidents or fears, concerns, suspicions to him. And Dr. Kipper also confirmed that Aaron never sent any photos of Amber with her alleged injuries that she sustained. Overall, I believe that Dr. Kipper was a great witness. I think he was entirely credible with quite a good memory, actually. He seemed very unbiased, natural, and yeah, just overall, I think he did good for Johnny. Moving on to Nurse Debbie Lloyd. Now, there is a bit of a joke going on the internet that they're calling her Debbie. I cannot recall Lloyd because she cannot recall a lot. I don't want to speculate. There's a lot of speculation about why she doesn't recall. It doesn't involve a bad memory, but I'm going to take her for her word and just operate on what I have available to me in terms of, what I witnessed as I listened to her. And she just didn't remember a lot. I don't know what to say. So with Amber's lawyers, again, it was all about drugs, drugs, drugs. Johnny Depp is on trial for his drug use. Didn't you all know? That's what this is about. It turns out the defamation thing is the soap opera. They blindsided us all, didn't they? She was asked a lot about Marilyn Manson. And again, this is an obvious ploy. Anytime Marilyn Manson is brought up, they just love bringing him up because they want to show the jury, like, hey, I bet you all know what Marilyn Manson's being accused of. And look, I guess Johnny, he keeps good company, doesn't he? Like attracts like. Debbie Lloyd very quickly kind of, shut it down in her own way and said, I don't know anything about that. She doesn't even remember seeing Amber in the house in Australia. Now, I don't know if that's because she has such a bad memory and she doesn't recall much. To me, it seems that if Amber was as injured as she claimed she was in that 3-day horrific hostage situation, where an actual allegation of SA was squeezed in there as well in the opening statement, which I've learned from reading the transcript involving getting Eve booted from the courtroom. I've learned that Elaine wasn't even meant to bring that up. It was meant to be confidential as it was in the UK, and then she just blindsided everyone and just spewed it out there to the jury. But that instance was so serious that you would think that Nurse Debbie Lloyd and Dr. Kipper, for that matter, would have remembered it because they both remember Johnny's finger. They remember where he was when they arrived. They both recalled he was sitting in the car, because it was that horrific. It's not something you just don't remember anymore. They remember there was graffiti all over the walls. They remember how the house was broken. But what they don't remember is Amber being injured, or in Debbie's case, Amber being there at all. Now, we don't start off necessarily on a good foot because one of the first notes that are brought up is Johnny saying, now this is Debbie writing down her notes, that he felt personally that the majority of his issues with Amber at the time was due to his substance abuse issues. Now, that's what he thought at the time, and it doesn't necessarily, no one's negating that he had issues. I mean, he sought a horrific detox. It was a horrible experience that he said he would never, ever put himself through again, in terms of he's never going to turn to opiates and even risk going through that ordeal ever again. So, of course, he was, it's natural. What is he, some kind of an angel where he's meant to just be pleasant the entire time, no matter what he's going through? So, yeah, issues might stem from that. Does that automatically mean it amounts to DV? No. Much in the same way that someone fleeing or defending themselves or restraining someone to stop them from hitting them does not amount to mutual abuse. It's funny, if a woman was defending herself from a violent male, would we even come up with the term mutual abuse? I'll leave you with that thought. Apart from that one note that I just referred where he thought his issues were causing further issues, there was a lot to counterbalance that, in fact, to really sway things in his favor. For example, Debbie had multiple, not only notes, but instances where she was there. She was an eyewitness. And at one point, she was escaping with Johnny, splitting with Johnny, where she witnessed Amber instigating fights, approaching him, even though he was being peaceful and minding his own business, yelling at him, screaming at him, following him around the house as he went from room to room, trying to escape her, trying to retreat, just like he did when he was a child. At one point, Amber actually blocked the elevator while Debbie and Johnny were attempting to leave the ECB and refused to let them leave. Debbie also stated that during his detox, Johnny complained and told her that Amber was making it incredibly difficult for him to detox, and that if he was actually going to go through with this, she had to be separated from him. And so Dr. Kipper and Debbie Lloyd facilitated that. And it worked. He successfully completed his detox. And he talks about this in his testimony. I'm not going to go through it in any detail, actually. But again, something worth listening to, because it tells you how much he wanted to get better. Debbie also confirmed that Amber was not happy about the prenup, but I will qualify this and say that this is based on what Johnny told her. Now, in Australia, she did say she saw a bruise on Amber's arm, but she doesn't know how it happened. And like I said, Amber never sought any treatment for it, never complained about it, never disclosed how it happened, etc., etc. And finally, a very important point that she made, she had a note that said that Johnny became extremely anxious at one point when he was told that Amber was coming to talk to him. Now, you tell me, is that the reaction of the abuser or the abused? Because I've witnessed abuse. Not in my relationship, I've witnessed it. And I know exactly how people behave when they're afraid of someone. And those aren't the actions of someone who is the perpetrator. Getting anxious, not wanting to be around the other person, being afraid of them. Is that really the abuser? So my overall observations on Debbie are, obviously she has a fairly poor memory. But honestly, otherwise, I found her quite credible. Quite credible. Again, natural, very clinical. Usually the courts and the jury find such witnesses to be credible, an overt display of emotion all the time. Like Isaac had a moment. Isaac was an exceptional witness. No one's like him, really. But in general, witnesses that are calm and composed and are direct, straight to the point, are favorable. And I believe that, again, she only helped Johnny's case. Moving on to Sean Bett, one of Johnny's members of security. So in his examination in chief, he did clarify that he was still employed by Johnny. When I say examination in chief, I mean when he was being questioned by Johnny's lawyers. He testified that alcohol doesn't really affect Johnny, that it's just as though he was drinking sparkling water, really. He has never personally witnessed him take drugs, but he knows about it. He said Johnny's very open about it. He talks openly about it. And again, this is something that Johnny says in his own testimony. Sean's first impressions of Amber in the early days were very good. And again, this rings true with Johnny. Everyone loved Amber to begin with. Of course, no one more than Johnny, but I will save that. Sean testified that Johnny is a very generous and very giving man, and was incredibly giving and generous to Amber and her friends and family. This includes living rent-free in his penthouses, but also using his car, which I don't have the make and the model, but it's an incredibly fancy car that he just let them drive, and basically gave them everything they needed. And Sean said that he thought that they were absolutely taking advantage of him. Sean testified that Amber started arguments very frequently, and he also saw her drink alcohol quite frequently. He personally witnessed several arguments, and he once saw her throwing either a plastic bottle or a cup directed at Johnny. But other than that, he never really witnessed any other incident of physical violence. Speaking of which, he never witnessed any injuries in all the years that he was with Amber. Not once did he witness an injury, and not once did she complain to him about Johnny being abusive. Now, on the other hand, Sean not only saw physical injuries on Johnny multiple times, but he helped document them. He has a history in law enforcement, and so he wanted to document the injuries by taking photographs as evidence for the future in case they needed them. And thank goodness for that. Of course, these photos were pulled up for the jury to look at. And these aren't just minor, injuries. These are significant. And I don't want to get into any details, but again, you just Google it. It's available if you haven't seen it already. Sean also specifically testified about April 21st, the night of her birthday dinner. A huge element of Amber's story was that Johnny arrived drunk, and Sean contradicted that. He said that, yes, he may have had a glass of wine, but he definitely did not seem drunk. This is very similar to what Johnny has testified. And with regards to the 21st of May, 2016, he repeated a very familiar story to me, really, because I've been covering this case for so long. He basically heard Amber screaming that night, rushed in through the door with Jerry Judge, saw that Johnny was standing around 20 feet away from her in the kitchen, and then she was very taken aback and went from screaming profanities at Johnny to saying, "Don't you ever do that again to me, Johnny. Don't you ever, hit me again, or this is the last time you'll hit me again." And Sean remembers being very taken aback by that, very confused. What did I just witness? Speaking of that night, 21st of May, he testified that he did indeed have a good, clear look at her face and observed no injuries, no swelling, no redness, no bruising. He also testified that he never observed Johnny causing any damage to any of the penthouses that night and was not violent towards anyone. Now, in cross-examination, of course, it's the typical, "You're on the payroll, aren't you? Why on earth would you bite the hand that feeds you? You're an enabler. You are all his yes people. You do everything he asks you to do. You facilitated his drug and alcohol consumption. You prioritized his safety above all others." I think it was Rottenborn who was cross-examining him, or was it Elaine? I'm not sure. I don't remember at this point. But basically, they were really trying to show the jury, hey, he would never prioritize Amber's safety above Johnny's. So whatever Johnny did to Amber, Sean would cover for Johnny because he was his priority. They pulled up a couple of texts that were actually not admitted as evidence, not allowed, because they were so out of the timeline. I was confused by it. One was from 2017 and one was from 2019. And they pulled them up to try to impeach Sean with regards to providing Johnny with drugs because he had testified he hadn't done so. And he didn't lie because up until the marriage ended, he didn't. And then in 2017 and 19, yeah, maybe he did. What's it to you? It's got nothing to do with the timeline. They were long divorced by then. And essentially, to wrap this part up, Amber's lawyers tried to demonstrate to the jury that, hey, listen, this guy was never there the entire time. Sean testified that he wasn't always there. They may have had fights where he wasn't privy to them. And so be careful how much credit and how much reliability you assign to him. Amber's lawyers also told the jury to remember that Sean was 20 feet away from Amber on the night of the 21st of May. So how could he have had a good, clear look at her face? How could he have known she wasn't wearing makeup? Because I think he testified that it didn't look like, I think the general consensus here is that Amber's use of makeup, at least back then, was very light-handed. When Johnny's lawyers questioned him again, they wrapped it up on a really strong note, I believe. Again, it depends on whether the jury thinks Sean is biased or not, which is that Sean testified that he was never concerned for Amber's safety in all the years that they were together, Johnny and Amber, but he was most definitely concerned for Johnny's safety. And I'm reminding you now that he was the person who suggested documenting Johnny's injuries in the form of photographs. I think Sean, again, quite a straightforward, seemingly fair and honest witness. He even praised Amber in the early days. I think that really helps with making him come across as an unbiased witness. Now, again, it depends on the jury, whether they think being on someone's payroll makes them incapable of telling the truth. which I disagree with, of course. I don't think these people are covering for Johnny. There's nothing to cover for. All right, moving on to Keenan Wyatt, who is a sound engineer, sound technician in the movie industry, who's worked with Johnny for over 25 years. And they also happen to be very close friends. He's traveled with Johnny's family, with Vanessa, the kids, and he's been around for a long time. He testified that Johnny has never, ever been physically violent or violent towards anyone. So in all the years he's known him, not once. He testified that he's a very loving father, and that he is not on the payroll. He basically gave a very stellar review of Johnny, to be honest. He said he's likable, and this is in terms of his professional reputation as well. Johnny's likable, very easy to work with, just an overall lovely person. And Elaine didn't like this because she objected to this answer twice, and the judge overruled that objection twice. Now, importantly, because Johnny's colorful language and fantastical texts come up a lot against him, Keenan said that Johnny does have a very dark British sense of humor. So Monty Python is a huge influence, and Johnny talks about that as well. And we all know Monty Python isn't exactly butterflies and sunshine and rainbows. Now, Keenan, and I didn't know this, maybe I forgot since 2 years ago, Keenan was on the Boston flight. That flight in May 2014 where she alleges Johnny kicked her. He was there, and his testimony did not align with Amber's version whatsoever. In fact, it was the other way around. So he testified that Amber was the one who was being very cold to Johnny, and that she seemed pouty. He actually went up to her, Keenan, on the flight and told her that, hey, you know, Johnny really cares about you. He really loves you. And her reaction was to snap and yell at Keenan, you know, screaming at him, how dare you talk to me? Get away from me. And so Keenan just had no choice but to retreat back to his seat. But Johnny defended Keenan, you know, much in the same way that he defended Kevin Murphy on the 21st of May 2016 when she was screaming profanities when Kevin was on speaker, I believe. Keenan testified that he never saw any marks or bruises on Amber. Now, when Amber's lawyers took over, they really tried to push the angle that you were on the payroll, weren't you? I think it was Elaine. And she kept trying to say, you know, you're in Johnny's contracts, you know, your rates are specified and you're named. And Keenan's like, I had no idea. And this came up a lot. And he kept saying, I don't know of this. I don't know of this. He specified that, no, the production company paid for everything, including my travel expenses, my hotel. You know, if it's not out of the norm, it's not out of the ordinary for members of the crew to have their expenses taken care of by the production company. He testified in response to Johnny's lawyer, I think it was Ben, who asked him in the redirect. He said, you've worked in movies where Johnny wasn't involved before, right? And he said, yes. And he was like, and when you traveled and everything, who covered the expenses? And Keenan said, the production company. So Elaine was trying to say, you're biased, you are on the payroll. In fact, Johnny, you know, he paid for your lavish fare and he set you up in fancy hotels. And Keenan's like, no, he didn't. I was in an apartment with the rest of the production crew while Johnny was in a fancy hotel. Like, you know, and if he happened to go on holiday with Johnny and his family, well, that's just the kind of person Johnny is. You know, he's just generous. I think that's been very clearly established so far. Now, they also tried to use an article that was published in October of 2018 where Sean Bailey, who is a top executive in Disney, basically said that Johnny was out. I think of Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, this is important because, of course, Johnny's arguing that a couple of days, 4 days after the op-ed was published in December, he was dropped from Pirates of the Caribbean. And so I don't know why they brought this up with, oh, it's because Keenan testified that Johnny and Sean Bailey had a good relationship and that when Johnny came back from surgery, when he came back to Australia to finish filming Pirates, he and Sean talked about future projects. So it contradicted Amber's camp story of Johnny was horrific on that set. Everyone wanted him out. You know, he caused significant delays. I mean, I'm sorry. The guy's finger was obliterated by his wife, according to Johnny's testimony and the evidence presented so far, of course. But, sorry, I have to say that for legal reasons. But yeah, I'm sorry he had to get injured. I mean, I'm sorry that delayed the schedule. But That was why they brought up that article. And Keenan said, I don't read this crap. But he didn't say crap. That's my language. But he said, yeah, these articles are not credible. So even if I did read them, I wouldn't believe them. And to wrap things up, Keenan said that he did not remember Johnny being verbally abusive to Amber on the Boston flight. He did not remember Johnny passing out in the back and moaning. And he was firm that he did not see Johnny kick Amber on that flight. You know, he was, again, quite a lovely witness, very natural, very easygoing. There was nothing contrived about Johnny's witnesses. And now we move on to the man himself, John C. Depp. This is where I'm going to really summarize, but you'll forgive me, I'm sure, because Johnny has actually spent the majority of the week testifying, and he's not even done. By the end of Thursday, Rottenborn said he still has quite a bit of cross-examination to get through. So Johnny's not off the hook, and then he's got, of course, his redirect, which I'm sure they're going to clean a lot of things up. But let's get started. So it opened up with Johnny being asked to explain to the jury why he was there. And he did. He told them, amongst other things, that everything was a lie, and he couldn't just sit there and take it. He felt obliged to take action and stand up, not only for himself, but more importantly for his children. He says at the conclusion of that part, which was quite lengthy because Johnny's quite the talker. I don't blame him, you know. People are telling me, oh no, you know, he's rambling. Oh, is that going to put off the jury? Look, I can't tell you what's going to put off the jury because I'm not the jury, and every jury, every person, every individual in the jury is different. You know, some people might be put off by it, yes. Some people might just be so invested in hearing Johnny Depp talk because Johnny is not a talkative, you know, he doesn't give interviews very regularly. He's not in the limelight if he's not promoting a movie. He says so himself. He's like, I don't do the celebrity thing. You know, he hates it. He just wants to work. And the fame that comes with it is surreal to him, and he's not used to it. So this is honestly the first time that the world gets to hear him. And so I say, let him talk. But he tells them, my goal is the truth. Truth is the only thing I'm interested in. Lies will get you nowhere. I am obsessed with the truth. So he talks a lot about his childhood. It really lines up with Christie's recollections as well, her testimony. He spoke about his mother and how severely depressed she became after his father left. He talked about his father, and honestly, based on his description of his father, who is still alive, Johnny seems to just be a replica of him. You know, right down to punching walls and inanimate objects because their wives just drove them to the brink. And again, there's this constant, oh, well, that shows he's violent. You know, they played the kitchen cabinet beater video that TMZ released, but they played the full video this time. It's towards the end, which includes her laugh. And of course, her face was there in the shot and she's smiling. So that was, yeah, the full version of that was played. But, you know, people are just like, there's this theme going on. Going, oh, yeah, well, you know, he reacted. How dare he react? It's like, oh. So are you telling me that if someone is pushed to the brink on an almost daily basis by their spouse, they're driven to the brink of insanity? And I've listened to their recordings. I haven't listened to the 4-hour one yet. I've listened to the one that's just over an hour. I mean, please listen. I really want to try to remember to link, to give you all the link to go listen, and, you know, even if it's just snippets. But the jury will be listening, in case you're wondering. It's not just the snippets that we observed. The jury will sit there in deliberations and they will listen to everything. You listen to those videos, please, if you're not sure who the instigator is, the perpetrator is, and come back and tell me in the comments what you think. Just listen to one's attitude in comparison to the other. And tell me that anyone, any human, wouldn't be pushed to the limit in the sense of reacting. You know, he's human. There's a limit. Everyone has a limit. You know, someone's going to poke and push and prod and drive you insane, and you're just going to sit there. I mean, all these people who are saying, oh, it was mutual because he also, I heard him use swear words in the recording, or he uses vulgar language in his text. I'm not excusing his language. He's not excusing his language. He said he's embarrassed by it. But to say that a person's reaction or reactions, and they're not violent reactions, because nothing in the evidence, we don't have any evidence so far of Johnny laying a finger on her. And we'll get to December 2015. But before you go and say, oh, he reacted, therefore this is a toxic mutual abuse situation, just put yourself in his shoes. Would you honestly, hand over heart, just sit there and take it? And just, smile and nod and be like, that's nice, honey. I'm not an abusive person, so I'm not going to react. Yeah, that's not human. You probably need to get your species checked out if that's how you would react. Anyways, back to his testimony. I'm going to skim over his, the beginnings of his childhood and his career, but I will note that he did say that his mother would always ask him to get her nerve pills, and he, over time, observed how she would calm down, how she would get better, as it were. And so he said, as I gave her her pill, I started popping one in when he was 11. And they did calm him down. They worked. And that's how he learned. It was learned behavior from his mother to rely on substances to make life more bearable, to numb the pain. And as someone who came from a broken home, he carried a significant amount of pain with him. And he still does. And so he explained to the jury that all of that drug use was never to party. He was never one of those kids, he would say, he said that where, oh, you want to party? And it was code for let's go, get high. To him, it was always self-medication, always to numb the pain or the ghosts of his youth or the demons of his youth, as he said. He talked about, as I said, how embarrassed he is of some of his language, but it's just a way for him to deal with his pain. He uses dark humor to make light or to just make it more bearable to deal with his pain. And he exaggerates a lot. So the more he exaggerates, the more he tries to convey to the receiver of that message that he's not doing very well. He basically said she wasn't the best actress and I had to coach her. I mean, have you all been seeing her during the trial? There's footage of it. There's footage of I'm a victim mask. And then anytime Elaine or someone else tries to get her attention, it just drops, instantly drops. And then she puts it back on. And then again, Elaine pokes her and it drops. It's almost comical if it wasn't such a serious situation. So yes, he talked about how they met and how she was too good to be true for the first year and a half or so before the mask started to slip. And then he gave examples of how he would get, little hints, red flags. There's the infamous ritual of when he comes home, she has to remove his boots and give him a glass of wine. And once he broke that ritual because she was busy, he took his own boots off. And she lost, she was angry. She's like, you don't do that. That's my job. So he gave certain examples like that. But basically he said, as with anything else, if you don't stop it, it blossoms. And blossom is a euphemism, of course, in this instance. But basically he said, as time progressed, she got worse and worse and worse until it escalated into flat out violence on her part. Eerily, he said that he started to realize that he was basically in a relationship with his mother. And he had become his father. So he was repeating history. When asked why he didn't leave, he actually said she threatened to end her life multiple times. If I ever left her, she said she would end her life. She would hurt herself. And he was reminded of his mother's attempt after his father left her. His own mother tried to do the same thing, and he didn't want that to happen. And so he stayed. And also, he loved her. He explained who came up with the recording idea. So how, we all came to now have these incredibly private recordings that I just feel entirely so uncomfortable to listen to. It's so intrusive. But he came up with it because she would gaslight him. She would do things and say things only to deny them, if not the next day, on the same day. I think with the bathroom incident where she kicks the door in his face when he checked on her toe, That same day, he summons Travis McGivern, and she goes, "What are you talking about? Nothing happened. You're fine. He's fine." And he just stood there. You know, I've been gaslighted. Oh boy, not by a spouse, by a very disturbed individual. And you're sitting there going, what just happened? It's like a train hit you. You're like, you actually start to think you're crazy. You actually start to think, this can't be real life. So that's what she would do to him. And so he would record to prove to himself that he's not crazy. Those are the lengths that she drove him to. We touch on the term monster. Johnny explained that he only used it to placate her. He's like, with Amber, you just placate her. He explained many other things. He explained how on the plane, when he went to the back, he didn't go to the back to pass out from a drug binge. He went to hide, as he always did, everywhere he went, whether it was a house, a hotel. He went to hide in the plane's bathroom and actually ended up falling asleep there. And he also clarified that the audio clip of him moaning, and it's very disturbing. It's not just moaning. He is clearly in pain. That wasn't even on the flight. He did say that to Rottenborn. He said that was not recorded from the flight. Now, he didn't get a chance. Of course, Rottenborn wasn't going to let him explain what that was from, but he will in Redirect. He definitely will. So we'll stay tuned for that. He touched upon the prenup, her cruelty during his detox, Australia. It was the world's first time, my first time listening to him describe it in detail, the shock he went through, the agony he went through. And I'm not even just talking physical agony, because he said, I couldn't even feel it, really. He said, I don't know if I was having a nervous breakdown, but I think I was. What do you do? What do you do in that situation? And I've seen the photos. They weren't shown on screen on YouTube, but I have seen them. Again, for the first time, the exhibits. It is a lot worse than I thought it was. My goodness, I don't know what my brain came up with, some tame version of it, because, wow. I became incredibly upset hearing him talk about Australia. With the 15th of December, the headbutt, he got up and demonstrated to the jury that he was cowering. She was going at him. And at one point, he found a chance to get up and restrain her and just stop hitting me. And so in that kind of scuffle, there was some physical contact. That's how he described it. Some accidental physical contact. Now, what's his face? Rottenborn tried to discredit him and go, in the UK, you said it was an accidental headbutt. But I think at that point, Johnny said, I might be getting my wires crossed. But at one point, Johnny said, you kind of just go along with it. I was being agreeable, which is something Kate James said as well, actually. So it's funny that Johnny ended up saying it. But he clarified to the jury that not a single part of him made contact with her eyes or nose. And she accused him of breaking her nose right then and there and showed him a bloodied Kleenex, but from a distance. So when he tried to calm her down, and he was concerned that, well, actually, I don't know if he felt, I think he was onto her, but he wanted to see. He wanted to check on her nose, and she wouldn't let him. And then later he said, and this is the first time I'm hearing this, he said that he waited for her to leave. She threw the tissue in the trash, and he picked it up and saw that it was red nail polish masquerading as blood. Look, he goes on and talks about all the other incidents. Honestly, again, check out Incredibly Average. The story never changes, because it's, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as most of the world is concerned, it's the truth. And there's only one version of the truth, but there is an infinite amount of lies. So I'm going to move on to cross-examination, but I'll leave you with this one. He was asked by his lawyers what he had lost, and he told the jury nothing less than everything. So he said, regardless, if I win this case, lose this case, I've lost. I've lost because this will forever be attached to my name and for the rest of my life. And yeah, that's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, for someone who is the victim in the situation, according to all the evidence that is available. is clearly the victim. And this is what, this is a situation he finds himself in because he dared tell her that I'm finished. We're getting a divorce. She couldn't let him just get away. She had to end it on her own terms. So in cross-examination, the plan really became very clear. Their strategy is to convince the jury that abuse is not limited to physical abuse. So they may have realized somewhere along the line, we may have issues proving physical. But is that what DV is? What about mental? Now she's accusing him of SA as well. So, it's even in the headline of, is it the online version or the hard copy? I'm not sure, but one of them actually implicates, mentions SA. So yeah, that's the strategy they're going for. They're going for, hey, remember that he's suing her for the op-ed, not anything said or done prior. So because of course, they're referencing the TRO and her showing up to court bruised and all of that. And they also tried to insinuate or prove that his career was already on the rocks. At one point they asked, do you remember what movies you were involved in after your divorce, but prior to the op-ed? And he couldn't remember, but he meant, I've been in so many movies, I can't remember. Rottenborn went, because you weren't in any, were you? Did he forget about Fantastic Beasts? Pretty sure that happened. By the way, I'm not going to go see that in the cinema. So people say that it's tanking. If it is, it's karma. I don't know what the hell Warner Brothers is doing after all the evidence that has already been out there, by the way, for the last 2 years. Again, just go to Incredibly Average's channel. It's just always been there. And they're still employing her, L'Oreal. It's like I said on social media today, it's a dystopia. It's not today by the time you see this video, but I said this is a dystopian situation, basically. But I will say, in general, Johnny was being very snarky with Rottenborn. Again, I don't know what impact that's going to have on the jury. To be honest, the more time went along, the more I found myself laughing. Johnny was being funny in certain instances. One example is Rottenborn said, we're going to move fast forward in time, Mr. Depp. And then Johnny said, I can feel it. And it was really funny. And you can hear everyone in the courtroom laughing. I don't know if the jury is laughing. I think Laura on Twitter said they're not. They're very serious and just taking down notes. But yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out. I think Amber is going to take on the role of, I'm the victim. And she's already been doing that with her face. But whether they're going to buy it, Johnny said himself she's not the best actress. So, it's from a professional. So basically, Rottenborn tries to distance the contents of the op-ed from Johnny entirely. You're not named. It was just one sentence. The rest of it was, for good, for reform, for change. Johnny just wasn't having it. He's like, she all but named me. And Johnny did say 2 years ago, 2016, she's in court with the mark on her face. I think we really did hit a rough spot though. And to me, that's when the numerous texts where Johnny not only refers to himself as a monster, where Amber's not included, she's not the recipient, she's not in a group chat, he's using it independently of her, which in itself, on its own is not a problem, because everyone, as I said, I think in my week 1, everyone has an ugly side or a bad side. You can call it the monster, again, without being an abusive person. But the problem with a lot of these texts is that Johnny was being very apologetic to Amber. And I think to third parties as well, going, oh man, my issues, I fucked up things with my girl. Or if he's apologizing to her, I am so sorry. I've taken my wrath out on my girl, or on the one that I love most, on my beloved. And it's not good. It's not good. So I am waiting for Johnny and his team to clear that up for the jury, because I don't care about the vulgar language, that does not make an abusive person. But apologizing profusely and in numerous texts for behavior that we don't even know the context, it's just apologies, because, Johnny can provide context later. It could be bad. I will say that apologizing to someone, again, does not incriminate them. Maybe Johnny's just a decent person who tends to apologize to anyone he's, he thinks in his head he's wrong. Like even with Debbie Lloyd, he thought it was Steven knocking on his bedroom door one time and he yelled out, "What?" And then when he realized it was Debbie, the same day he sent her a long, poetic, kind of touching, beautiful, lovey-dovey language apology, So he's just that kind of a person. He apologizes. Are we going to use it against him? Amber's team certainly tried. So again, I really have to summarize here because this could really go on forever, but they played the kitchen cabinet video. They played audio of him throwing up. They played audio of him moaning, as I said. It's just nasty, private clips that, you just can't help but feel horrible for him as he sat there. But Johnny wasn't taking it. At the very end, I'll get to the end, but let me just say, Johnny wasn't just taking it from Rottenborn. He was really, he stood his ground. He really did. When Rottenborn would say, "Would you agree with that?" And Johnny was like, "No, sir, I do not agree with that." Or he'd be like, "No, Mr. Rottenborn." And he would really emphasize that name. Gee, I wonder why. But in one instance, he was very cleverly telling the jury, Johnny, that the March 2013 photo with the property of JD box and the cocaine, he kept saying, "Yes, it's a beautiful composition, that photograph, isn't it? Just beautiful. Yes, that's a perfectly placed, everything was just so choreographed." So he was in a roundabout way telling the jury, this is staged. A few prior inconsistent statements were pulled up from the UK transcripts. Nothing crazy serious to discredit him, by the way. This is where he says, "I was at that point just going along with her lawyers." Whatever, he's being honest. Sometimes you don't understand until you're in the witness stand, but I've personally never done it. I don't think I would ever go along with the opposing side just to kind of get things moving. But, if you've been there for hours and hours or days on end, you kind of just want it to end, and it's stressful. And yeah, is it the best thing to say? No, but it happens. Kate James did it too. Of course, it's not, good news. It doesn't score them points basically as witnesses, but it's not the worst thing ever. Because for the most part, like I said, they are very minor inconsistencies. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. They're just, the strategy was, your kids loved Amber, didn't they? In fact, you were the one who turned, you blamed Vanessa for, turning your kids against Amber. It was just silly things. The guy was blinded by her. He admitted he thought she was too good to be true, With regards to the kitchen cabinet beater video, Johnny very aptly says, if she was intimidated, why was she filming? If she was scared to death, why didn't she leave? Why was she smiling? Why was she laughing? They ended the cross-examination with an audio clip of their meeting in San Francisco in July 2016, where Johnny was, let me call it self-inflicting or attempting to, and Amber was stopping him. That got to Johnny. I suspect he was taken back to his state of mind because at he teared up. He teared up over that. I can only imagine what it must have felt like being taken back to such a dark, dark time of your life that he's not even really out of yet. He's not out of the woods. My goodness, I am the people we have to share this planet with, huh? It's scary. I'll say what I said in my podcast. It's just, if you meet an Amber Heard or a Meghan Markle, just run for the hills, because nothing good can come of it. If someone seems too good to be true, then again, from my limited experience, admittedly on this planet, listen to your instincts. It's because they are too good to be true. And of course, one can say hindsight is 20/20, but just listen to your instincts. That's all I can say. All right, I'm going to end it there. Don't despair. It was a rough week. It was. But so far, really, the status quo is Johnny has a lot of independent evidence that supports him. Amber doesn't. You know, with Amber, it's all, oh, he uses vulgar language and text and he apologizes to me. But Johnny has eyewitnesses. Multiple. He's got, honestly, Debbie seemed like a very unbiased witness. And she witnessed things. She saw them. It's not just reporting on based on what Johnny told her. Like Dr. Anderson, you know, she just relied on Amber's complaints. So don't despair, you know. I still think Johnny can come out of this victorious. Yeah, that's it. It was a rough week for me to watch, really, because that cross-examination was brutal, and it's not even over yet. But Johnny's being strong. He's being so strong. I'm going to end it there. I hope you all enjoyed this. Again, apologies for a long video, but it's the name of the game with weekly recaps. I will see you in the next one. Or if you tune into our podcast to talk about another incredibly toxic woman, then I'll see you then with Zach. All right. Take care. Thank you all for the support. And yeah, I'll catch you later.